What's up guys, Scum here, and today I've got a video about a question that I've been asked very often, either here on YouTube, on my Instagram live streams, or on my Instagram, and that is, who is my favorite Cannibal Corpse vocalist? Chris Barnes or George Corpsegrinder Fisher? Now, what I'm going to do is, instead of right off the bat telling you who I prefer, I'm going to make a case for both. I'm going to start with Chris Barnes, and I just want to say I finally got a first pressing of this record, Metal Blade, and this is one of my most sought after, if not the most sought after record in my collection. Finally, so excited to have it in my collection. But let's talk about Chris Barnes for a minute. He is a legendary death metal vocalist, regardless of who you prefer when it comes to Cannibal Corpse. Without Chris Barnes and without Cannibal Corpse, death metal as we know it likely is not the same. So his impact on the death metal scene cannot be understated. His vocal style, those deep guttural growls, very impactful, very influential, and easily recognizable. When you talk about albums like Eaten Back to Life, their debut, Butchered at Birth, which is really kind of when his vocals took a turn like downwards for that deeper, more guttural sound. And then you get to classics like Tomb of the Mutilated and The Bleeding. Those records to me are untouchable, undeniable death metal classics. And another thing that I will say about Chris Barnes is his lyrics. He wrote most of the lyrics for those albums, and they kind of gave Cannibal Corpse this sickening, disgusting edge over their peers at the time. Over the top, immensely vile, grotesque lyrics. I mean, you have songs like Stripped, Raped, and Strangled, Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt, Fucked with a Knife. I mean, these are so over the top, absolutely horrific lyrics, and that kind of gave Cannibal Corpse this image of being this insanely gory death metal band. And to me, when I first got into death metal, The Bleeding is the album that I consider the launching point for me getting into death metal. And you know, it has everything that I want in a death metal album. It has Chris Barnes' deep, growling vocals, the absolutely disgusting lyrics, you know, everything that I want is there. Now, if you look ahead and look at Chris Barnes' post-Cannibal Corpse, when he went on to form 6 Feet Under, especially with his releases after Haunted, you could kind of tell that his vocals weren't going to hold up. And that is so apparent in, you know, the last few releases from 6 Feet Under. Crypt of the Devil, I think it's called, and then Unborn and Undead. I mean, you can tell that throughout the years, the strain that he's put on his vocals have really taken a toll. And he just is not the same vocalist that he was for those first 4 Cannibal Corpse records, and then his first record was 6 Feet Under. So I will say that, I mean, that doesn't really have that much to do with Cannibal Corpse, but the fact that his voice hasn't held up over time, and Corpsegrinder's really has, kind of, you know, tips the tables a little bit. So with that being said, let's talk about Corpsegrinder. You know, like I just said, his vocals have stood the test of time. From, you know, his days in Monstrosity to his debut with Cannibal Corpse on Vile, all the way up until their very last release, A Skeletal Domain. you could argue that his vocals sound almost identical throughout all of those records, which is really, you know, a testament to the work that he does. I'm sure that he does, you know, keeping his vocals strong and healthy, and really just a model of consistency. And for my money, I think he was the absolute perfect replacement for Chris Barnes. I'm sure there could have been a number of people that came in and took the frontman role in Cannibal Corpse and done a great job, but we'll never know that. So Corpsegrinder, to me, absolutely flawless transition between the bleeding and Vile. Oftentimes when a band replaces a vocalist, you will see a shift in their musical style, or you will see a shift in their sound, and that really can't be said for Cannibal Corpse. Again, model of consistency, album after album, and I mean, I could talk about this for days. They're my favorite metal band, but I'll keep it to a minimum. Their records, just one by one, sound like a Cannibal Corpse record. Everything that you want to hear on a Cannibal Corpse record, you're going to hear on, you know, The Bleeding, Vile, Gore Obsessed, Gallery of Suicide, all the way up to the newer ones like Kill, Torture, Skeletal Domain. You're going to get a Cannibal Corpse record, and that's something that I truly appreciate. And, you know, Corpsegrinder, all the jokes about his neck and his insane ability to headbang and windmill for an entire hour during their live set. Again, a perfect frontman. It's entertaining to watch and a little bit intimidating because he's a very large human being. His hair is normally down in front of his face when he's not headbanging. Holds the mic just like this. He doesn't cup it. He doesn't do anything fancy or special on stage. Does not move around at all. Just stands there and belts death metal vocals for like an hour straight. And again, very impressive, a little bit intimidating. And as far as death metal vocalists go, I think George Fisher, Corpsegrinder, an absolutely amazing death metal vocalist. So there's my case for both parties involved, Chris Barnes and Corpsegrinder. Now, to answer the question on the topic of this video, who do I prefer? Drum roll. Chris Barnes. I'm going to tell you why. Simply put, I hold The Bleeding in such high regard. It is my favorite death metal album of all time. Might even be my favorite album of all time. Chris Barnes, lyrically, vocally, everything, his performance on that album is insanely good. And I have even heard the Created to Kill EP, which, if you're not familiar, Created to Kill was the original title of Vile before they changed it and changed vocalists. And there do exist some demos with Chris Barnes on vocals doing songs that ended up on Vile. And I will say, they fucking kick ass. I think that if Chris Barnes had stayed with the band, at least for Vile, I mean, I already brought up how his vocals have kind of taken a turn for the worse, in my opinion. But I really think that there could have been another string of 2, maybe 3 albums where he delivered a very solid performance and Cannibal Corpse would have stayed at the top of their game. And then you have Tomb of the Mutilated, I mean, Hammer Smashed Face and Stripped, Raped, and Strangled. Those 2 songs, they've played every set, every time they've played for the last over 2 decades. I mean, when you think of Cannibal Corpse, those 2 songs will come to mind. And those are Chris Barnes songs. So, I mean, again, that just proves, you know, when you think of Cannibal Corpse, a lot of times you're going to think Chris Barnes. Corpsegrinder will come to mind because he's been with the band for much longer and he is their current vocalist. And another thing that I forgot to mention, Corpsegrinder has never written any of the lyrics for Cannibal Corpse. most of the lyric duties have been Alex Webster or Paul Mazurkiewicz, and I have to take that into account when I'm comparing these two vocalists, because it's one thing to get up on stage and deliver an amazing performance, and same thing in the studio, but it's another thing to sit down and take what's up here and put it on paper and have it be absolutely grisly and horrific. And again, that gives the edge to Chris Barnes. And you know, I discovered that early Cannibal Corpse stuff first, so that stuff is a little bit more special to me. And then, I mean, their first album, Eaten Back to Life, even that album, for a debut, unbelievable. And Chris Barnes is on that album. So, I mean, I think I made a strong case for both vocalists, but I also think that I've made it clear and fair as to why I prefer Chris Barnes. So I've been asked that question many times. The answer's been the same every single time. I thought it would be a good topic for a video, give you a little bit of insights on how I feel about those two vocalists and also Cannibal Corpse as a whole, considering I am such a diehard fan of that band. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your opinion on who your favorite is in the comments. I would like to know. Again, thank you for everyone who has subscribed, commented, watched these videos. I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep saying that every single video because I really do mean it. And yeah, that's all for now. And until next time, take care.